Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Matt Fazio, and I manage our communications and development department here at Donnelly-Boland and Associates. For a number of years now, we have been putting on educational seminars. First, we were doing them in person, and then we started doing them in a hybrid model. And then really now we're primarily doing them through Zoom, through these Zoom webinars. We know that there are a lot of other online tools and resources to go to, but one of the things that I think that we provide is that you can ask us questions throughout. We are here as your resource. When you go and watch a YouTube video, you don't have that same type of interaction. And what we really like to do is to be able to be here for who you are, what you need, what ways we can provide you with support. Keep in mind that our entire webinar series is here for educational purposes. We are here to show you, we actually know the stuff that we're talking about. Today is going to be a great session. This is going to be on optimizing your social media. In the communications department here, we manage social media for our internal clients, so Donnelly-Boland and Associates, plus the other two sister companies we have here, the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers and HSAO. But we also have clients too, so we do quite a lot on social media. And what we have found in recent years is that so many people know that they want to be on social media, but they don't really know what to do. How many times a week should I post? What platform should I use? I'm posting all the time, but I'm not getting the engagement that I'm looking for. Well, what is Instagram? What are Reels? Should I be using TikTok? These are the things that continuously come up. And I think that in today's session, we have a great speaker who's going to be able to go over a lot of these different things. So Anna Getz is going to be our speaker today. She has been with Donnelly-Boland for almost 3 years now, and she is a communication and development generalist here. And one of the things that I think that she does extremely well is she's great at the vision for social media. She's great at the high level saying, here are all the things that we need to do and here's how we get them done. She's very detail oriented, and she has the ability to move through big projects together at once. She's going to be great for this session, and we're really looking forward to it. If you've never used the webinar Zoom before, just a couple of things. There are two different boxes at the bottom for you to use. There's a Q&A pod and there's a chat pod. So if you have a direct question that you want to be answered, something that you think might be valuable to you in your business or maybe valuable to everybody else, throw it in the Q&A pod. So for example, if you want, wait a minute, should my business that does this, if you have specific questions, I want you to put them in there. You can ask those questions throughout the entire session. Some of them I'm going to be answering while Anna's talking. Others of them, if we think that, if I determine, hey, maybe Anna should be answering this right now, I'll stop Anna and have her chime in there. On the other hand, the chat pod, we're going to be using this if you just have general anecdotes or things that you want to bring up. Also in this session, she might ask you to answer regular questions, and that would be in the chat pod. So Q&A are your questions that you actually want answered, chat pod, general anecdotes, and responding to Anna. So we try to be incredibly mindful of people's time. We try to keep these to about 1 hour so that we pack these in with as much good information as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Anna.
All right, thank you so much, Matt. That was so nice, such a nice intro. Like Matt said, my name is Anna Getz, and I am the Communications and Development Generalist here at Donnelly-Boland. And like he said, we work on everything that falls under the marketing and communications umbrella for our company and our sister companies, but we also provide these services to clients of our own, i.e. social media is our biggest one. So more often than not, people are coming to us either needing a tune-up of their marketing that they already have, their social media marketing, or they're starting from scratch and they actually don't know what their first step should be. They don't know what actionable tips to take and what's going to actually work for them. So What we're going to cover today will hopefully help anybody who has yet to take that plunge, or somebody that is already managing their organization's social media campaign, and maybe they want to see some different results with it. Overall, I want to cover, these are 3 things that I think you can cover if you are just starting out, or like I said, you're in the middle of it and you need to do a re-evaluation. So putting measurable goals into place is going to be the first one. Defining your audience, possibly again, even if you think that you already know what your typical clientele is, where they're spending most of their time on apps, you may need to redefine this. And third is evaluating your content and coming up with a content calendar that will just put your, even lay out your year for your social media campaign overall. So you can kind of pick certain spots where you need to fill in the blanks maybe, or you need to figure out what content you need to be actually posting and generating more of. And also we're going to talk a little bit about scheduling features and things like that that may not work for you, but may help your company as well. So before I get into the agenda, I actually just want to share a couple statistics. I think that, you know, the reason why I share these is because most of the time, social media gets pushed to the side for small businesses as their priority. And it makes sense. When you look at a small business or a nonprofit, you usually have limited resources and time for it. So, you know, you're always thinking about what certain fire needs to be put out first, rather than maybe generating a content calendar for your business plan. But I think that these specific statistics show why it really is important to integrate your social media to be a consistent part of your business plan moving forward. And like I said, as of January 2021, there was 4.66 billion people active on social media. And I know that we noticed a huge jump in that post-pandemic, but this is a trend that's going to continue on. And this next part is a little bit biased, but I do like it because I believe in it too, is that 73% of marketers believe that their efforts through social media marketing have been either quote unquote somewhat effective or very effective for their business. And I'm going to go with the latter, of course. And a big part of this is that 54% of social browsers now are using social media to research products, or they're researching services. And when you look at these, it's kind of a no-brainer on why we need to integrate social media. But, you know, looking at a small business, it's easy to say why it gets pushed to the wayside. But I think our agenda today is going to help that. And the first step for a small business or a nonprofit is to look at your goals. And this seems really simple, but when I am referring to looking at your goals for your social media marketing, I mean looking at your measurable goals, defining them. What do you want the end result to be from putting more time, effort, and personnel into your social media marketing? Do you want, let's say, by the end of Q4 of 2022, we want an increase of 25% of our page's followers, or we want to see better click-through rates to our website that are going to generate more contact forms being brought in, which is going to result in more business and possibly more clientele, right? Or even that, just talking about your return on investment. And a lot of times when you actually are getting a new service, or if you bought something new, you know, when you get those forms with the company, they say, how did you hear about us? And you usually answer a drop down that says either a website promotion, a friend, a website, something along those lines, flyer. That's people actually measuring what tactics are working for them. So we see it often, but we usually don't think about it very much. But that is something that a lot of businesses use to try to figure out their ROI on these things, and then measure out, okay, what tactics are working, that we got this new client on board, and et cetera. So using those tactics and measuring your metrics is a great way to figure out what is working for you and to measure your goals and see if you are reaching them. So first, to get to that place where you guys can reach your goals and you are meeting the quarterly requirements you're looking for or the numbers you're looking for, is to figure out who is going to be responsible for all of your social media marketing. So when you're establishing these measurable goals, you have to evaluate how much time you're really going to put into this, or how much time is actually feasible and realistic for your organization to be putting into this. How much of your budget do you realistically have to allocate to social media endeavors? Because not all the time is it expensive. Social media does not require ad dollars, because as long as you're not sponsoring your posts, most of the time that you're spending on your social media marketing and your campaign is going to be your employees' hours or your own hours put into it in the first place. So when we talk about measurable goals, we need to really be realistic with ourselves and the time we have and say, is that goal feasible enough right now? Can somebody on my existing team maybe take this on as a dual role, or do we have to hire somebody else for this? Does this need to turn into a full-time gig or a part-time gig? And I obviously think that social media can easily turn into a full-time gig quickly, but it just depends on what goals your organization or small business is looking for, and if you have the money and time set aside for it. And never looking at these things in the first place and doing social media as a one-off is really the reason that a lot of small businesses do get behind in the first place, is because we never have measurable goals defined, and we never really put somebody in charge of it or allot their responsibilities to them. We never really put a proper foundation in place for them, per se. So putting that proper foundation and infrastructure in place to figure out, okay, what do we want moving forward? And then know, maybe when we hit Q4 of 2022, we'll reevaluate, maybe put some new goals into place. Never setting that up in the first place will never allow social media to continue on with your business. It's something that's going to become possibly inactive. And it's something that we see a lot of the time. And I actually have a poll question for everybody on here. And this is what I'm curious of, because I have seen this several times myself, and I know a lot of other people have. And I want to ask, give you several, probably about a minute to answer this, but has your company or organization that you're at now ever started posting on a new platform only to become inactive after a few posts? You don't really see them anymore. Or do you know somebody that has, or maybe another company or someone you know that is maybe self-employed? Okay, I'll give us a couple more seconds for people to answer. Okay, mixed results here. I'm going to end this poll and share it with everybody. So we had a couple people actually answer no, a couple, answer that they're unsure, and some answer yes, they have seen this before. So mixed results on this, which actually makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times we see that maybe some companies do stay consistent with one platform, but they're not staying consistent with another, or some companies, vice versa. So it is something that I think we see mixed parts on, but for myself and a lot of the people I see that, come to Matt and myself for a tune-up, usually they're on kind of falling off the wagon a bit with their social media marketing. So putting these things into place beforehand is going to kind of avoid that ever happening or any of your platforms per se ever really becoming inactive. So once we know what we have to put in place for our goals and who we're going to allocate the time to and the money that's going to be spent, we need to kind of take a step back and look at our typical clients or the typical audience that we are working with currently. So when I talk about this, I talk about who is your target audience. Using our sister company, the Alliance, for example, they are an early intervention coordination agency for children with developmental disabilities. So a lot of the time, their typical audience is going to be parents, usually between, let's say, 20 to 40 years old. So they know their target audience. You also need to know your audience's aesthetics and their themes. What appeals to them? What's going to entice them more into your page? And then we're also going to go over why it's important to look at helping your audience instead of just self-promoting with your audience and why that doesn't work. And by doing that, how it really builds more trust with your ideal audience. And I actually want to bring out an example on aesthetic for an audience. So I'm going to bring in two different Facebook pages. The first one we see here is Bright Horizon, and this is a childcare facility here in Pittsburgh. And if you look at this, now hiring awesome educators, this is a really lighthearted, wholesome feel to a page. It's more light, it's brighter, we have faces on here. It's very personable and it creates kind of a better atmosphere for, a typical audience that's going to be a parent, possibly looking to make an appointment for their child. Maybe they have some concerns. So, this is a great aesthetic to fit that. On the other hand, let's say this is going to be more of a stark difference. This is a tech startup. And it is also based in Pittsburgh. And this is called Near Earth, and it's more of a serious feel already from the start. We have a lot of employees on here, and it's just more, it's just not as lighthearted. I love the feel of this page. I think I love this graphic, but it's not the same as a childcare page. And aesthetic is important because what if we swap these two themes between the two? I'd be a little confused if I was a parent coming to a childcare page that had more of this feel in it and it wasn't really personable. There wasn't a lot of faces or, fun activities being shown. So those are the reasons why thinking about your aesthetic and maybe reevaluating it is important, and it could lead to more traction on your page. I think a lot of the times that companies don't do this is maybe they've been sticking with a theme for several years at this point, or they've been matching colors on their logo for a while and they don't want to stray away from that, which is understandable, but maybe at that time a little rebranding might be worth a look at because maybe it's really not appealing or working for your target audience at all. So, we discussed who is the target audience and what are they really looking for and what is their feel? How do we really entice them and make them feel comfortable enough to maybe reach out and complete that contact form, maybe make that final step? And it can be done just through kind of displaying the right vibe with your social media. It really is that simple. And besides enticing them in enough and making the right aesthetic and theme for them on a page, I think that it's a good thing to know for new or small businesses that your marketing is really a gradual process. It's not a one-stop destination. It's a journey. And when we want to see faster results on maybe a new page we came up with, we tend to go down the rookie route of too much self-promotion. And what I say by that is that you need to be informative and you need to be interactive and responsive with your audience. Those are like the three best things that you can do as a new business or a business that already is doing your social media marketing, but maybe you're not really integrating anything that is valuable to your audience. And why this works is because it builds up your reputation in the industry and it builds more trust with your ideal audience. And at this day and age in social media, we have so much, excuse me, we have so much self-promotion. It just adds to the clutter that we have learned to tune out on all the forms of media that we're consuming in a day. If you think about it, you wake up, you maybe are reading the news, you're checking your phone throughout the day, and then there's even more media after work. And then besides media, even outdoor advertisements. I mean, it's everywhere at this point. And because of that, we're just not as receptive to ads as we once were. So
let me actually step in right here.
yeah.
I actually don't have this actual statistic with me, but it just reminded me of it. I heard that a person between the ages of 5 and 65 see more ads in 2 days than someone in 1980 did in a year. That's wild. It's just absolutely wild to me. We're seeing ads everywhere we go, seeing them on our phones, on our computers. They're within everything. They're in our television shows. Even when you're streaming, you're still seeing ads. It's absolutely wild. We're inundated with them. Sorry, you can keep going.
No, that's good. It really shows kind of how it's almost alarming in a way. Like I can't even imagine that, how it must have been at that time to not see advertisements day to day. And that's, that's a great point, because that's why we need to roll with the punches a little bit and maybe change up what we're doing, so that, our ads aren't ignored, because now people are just ignoring content that they don't find interesting or valuable to them because there's just too much media to take in on a day-to-day basis. So balancing out your self-promotion with providing valuable information to your audience is how you really can combat this. People have a lot of questions that they want answered, and you could provide these and build a better reputation in your industry. And we have Google now answering questions in 2 seconds, like right in our hands. But our information overload makes people still want questions answered by somebody actually in the industry that they're talking about. They want that reassurance now, because it's not only more definitive for them, it's just more trustworthy for them. And that gives you a better look as maybe somebody that's an industry leader besides just being in the industry. A great example of this is, say you were in May of 2020 of last year and you worked in HR. How many new mandates and new paid sick leave acts and et cetera, and protocol was being put into place like every single day. Also with the PPP loans, so many people had so many questions, and it was like imperative to be providing those for them. And another good example is actually just a webinar like this. Donnelly-Boland always provides these complimentary webinars on, all the different industries that we provide here. And I think that if the entire thing was me just, maybe like self-promoting, Matt and myself, talking about all the services we can provide for you and our clients and what we already do. I mean, if you were polite, you wouldn't log off already, but you would have already shut it out because it's just too much. And so it's just a good example of why it just doesn't work. And you need to more of provide something for your audience just besides your services. So I actually have a question now before I move on to talking about the right platforms that your company should be using and should be looking at a little more closely. If you could drop in the chat, just like 2 words for it, can you name your industry? And then can you name if you're just guessing, that's fine as well, but name your industry. And then for me, also name what you think your typical client is. Give you a couple seconds to drop that in the chat really quickly. Facilities and managers, commercial, okay, great.
I think that one of the things that ends up coming up with this part here that Anna's talking about is that your industry and the people that you serve and that like your ideal client is going to change from even place to place, because sometimes there might be, for example, we're an accounting firm primarily, and not all accounting firms have the same ideal client. So some don't work with not-for-profits at all. Some work with a ton of not-for-profits. Some don't work with any startup businesses or small businesses, and some do. So trying to figure out those things and be able to identify those things right away, I think is really important for industries and for individual organizations.
That's a great point. And even looking back and knowing that it might, it's going to change. I think Donnelly-Boland is a good example of, I feel like we started out mostly with nonprofits being a huge part of our audience. And now it's shifting more to startups over the years with, University of Pitt and CMU and things like that. So it's always important to kind of go back to this and maybe redefine it, because it really could be impacting a lot of your content that you're sharing and the platforms that you're sharing as well. So speaking of platforms, choosing the right one for your audience and your industry is like the battle of it. And it's really easy to kind of maybe get lost in the shovelful of how many platforms and outlets we have. And I'm going to provide more statistics for you, but again, there's like an overwhelmingly large amount of statistics on social media, and it's changing from year to year. But I think that the few that I plucked really can help illustrate the typical audience that is on these platforms, and that are which audience and maybe like age group is using them the most on a day-to-day basis. So, Facebook, an overwhelming majority of US adults are using Facebook, and 76% of them have used it within the last month. In stark comparison to Twitter, we only have 22% of US adults using Twitter, coming down a couple percentages from just 2018 to 2019. And for Instagram, it's an overwhelmingly majority of being a younger generation using the platform, while only 38% of Gen X is using it. And I actually didn't include this statistic, but Instagram is also the majority female users. So that is also important to note. And LinkedIn is also, I call it like our bread and butter for Facebook or for Donnelly-Boland, because of our accounting and finance industry. It's kind of seen as the professional network. In 2020, it was voted the most trusted, and it pulls a lot of the social media traffic to websites, particularly to blogs and articles that people are sharing. And so it rings true, because when you go on LinkedIn, the most that people are posting is articles linking with their company. And then YouTube is, kind of climbing up the ladder for the younger generations, but they're using it more to watch their video content than their basic or premium cable packages. And it's becoming that and streaming services just the normal to watch instead. And then last but not least is TikTok, which I think is a tricky one because it seems to be the most trendy right now. But the majority, it's a younger generation that's using this the most. And it's also, the majority is female. So it's important to look at these statistics when you're defining your audience and trying to figure out how you can reevaluate your marketing and and which platform you should really be spending more time and effort on. Because I'm actually going to ask you one more chat question. Just based off of these findings, for Donnelly-Boland, for our company that is in the accounting and finance industry, between TikTok and LinkedIn, which would you say that we should spend more of our time and effort on? So if you want to put in the chat, just TikTok or LinkedIn for us, which do you think is going to be just better as our primary outlet? Give me a couple more seconds. That's good. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the overwhelming majority, and it is so true. We spend more of our time on that, and then TikTok. We don't really need to be spending an hour or so making the TikTok videos or everything, because barely any of our audience is really on TikTok. And, we see a lot of instances with clients and people that come to us where they're being overwhelmed or burnt out by all of the platforms that are available. And maybe they're trying to jump onto the trendiest platform just because the numbers with that platform are jumping. But, they're putting ample amounts of time into spending, their resources on content that's only specific to that platform. And they don't even know if that platform is really ideal for their typical audience. And they don't know if their typical audience is even on that platform a lot. So when you're discussing small businesses and nonprofits and their limited resources, this is a really important thing to take into consideration. If half the time it's even worth the effort to try to spread yourself thin over all of the platforms instead of just putting really good effort and time into 2 or 3. And once you think about that and you think about the statistics with these platforms, another good thing just to put into perspective is 2 indicators between these. If you're coming back and reevaluating your campaign, always look at these 2. How much time do I have to put into these platforms? Am I utilizing more of these just for the sake of covering more ground? Is it really doing me any good on my ROI by getting on TikTok when I actually don't need it? And your industry is a second indicator. Is my industry on this app at all? The statistics really say not. So maybe we shouldn't spend our time and resources into this as much. And once we have kind of defined our goals, we've allocated the right time, and we've figured out and studied what platforms are going to be the best suit for our companies, we need to figure out what is the best content for them and what content we want to be posting. So when you are looking at your content and trying to build out a content calendar, there's several things that we're going to go over that you need to put into place, which is identifying the pillars of content, the different kinds, how you're going to designate your time for this, and how to designate time for timely content in your industry that is going to pop up, and when quantity matters with your content and when the quality matters more. And at the end, I am going to get a little bit more into scheduling features and the different apps that are out there. So when I talk about identifying your content's pillars for your organization and your branding, maybe you have already figured out, okay, we have a lot of articles on this subject that we already have that we can post, or you already have a lot of ideas for your self-promotion. Maybe think about what we're doing too much of and maybe what we need to do more of. So if you're already doing a lot of self-promotion, with your social media pages, maybe you need to pull back on that and integrate a little bit more of that informative, interactive, and responsive material that is going to put your platform light years ahead with traction and engagement. So developing those 2 things and figuring out what needs pulled back on and what needs more of a push is going to help you start to build out your content calendar and really see it from a bird's eye view. And that means that you need to also, when you're looking at your content calendar, is move away from more of a sporadic one-off basis. And that's because sporadic time doesn't really lead to any traction on your pages. So besides the time designation that your budget is allotting you, your time designation week to week, maybe starting by only an hour or so a week to brainstorm and develop and generate new content for that calendar, is really important, because it's going to keep leading you on an upward trajectory of a robust, consistent campaign. And time designation is really important in marketing. And I think if you're already in marketing, you can attest to that you often are wearing several hats. Here at Donnelly-Boland, besides our own clients, we have to take care of everything that's underneath the marketing and communications umbrella. So it includes several different things, from our newsletters to our website, photography, our videos, event planning, etc. So if you're already doing your organization's marketing or social media, you probably already have a couple of those other things on your plate, I'm going to guess. So it's hard to find time designation to think about these things from a bird's eye view and get better at building out your content calendar. So just like I said, implementing maybe an hour or so a week is a great way to start and not overwhelm yourself, and build out those pillars a little bit better and get a better view at what you could do for certain times of the year. Because majority of the time, your page's consistency is more key for reaching more engagement and views and followers, rather than anything else. Because a lot of sites tend to bury posts now if they're not paid ads. And the best way to get around that without spending extra money from your budget is just going to be posting more frequently. And I think a lot of businesses fall into the trap of, besides having too much on their plate already or not really knowing where to start, they fall into the trap of posting every, maybe once a week or a few weeks, or just becoming inactive overall. It's because they are intimidated by maybe developing the highest quality content. And I think to start, there is absolutely no harm in utilizing free sites for stock images or stock photography. Simple examples of that are like Pexels, Unsplash. There's a lot out there to use. And so when you need to just get started, it's not a bad idea to just try to implement a little bit of those maybe into your strategy. And another part of building out your content calendar is, you're like, okay, I have the idea. I'm going to post as much as I can. I'm going to post as frequently as possible. Like, it's going to be great. I'm going to have all this new traction on my page. I get the idea. And that's like it's a great start, but what you really need to do is maybe focus on one topic at a time for your industry instead of them all. And what I mean by this is, like, let's use an example of maybe you help manage the social media for a car repair shop in Pittsburgh, or you already, you manage a car repair shop, you've already been given the responsibility of social media. Instead of doing your self-promotions 100% of the time, you should show how seasoned you are in your industry to build that kind of trust with your audience. And I think a good way to do that would be posting informative videos and content on how your company operates. So let's say in winter months, in November, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you're posting a little bit more on winter car care. Maybe caution for salt on the roads, or which winter tires you guys recommend at the shop, etc. This is a good example of focusing on one topic at a time for your campaign instead of all of the topics in your industry, because it's more timely, so it gets better traction. Focusing on timely topics for an extended period of time is a better way to leave a lasting effect on your customers. rather than just trying to overload them with more information that they're probably already blocking out. So this is a great example of when quality will reign over quantity of your posts. Posting timely content on your industry and how to help your consumers is better than just more posts per page. You know, a winter tire car care video or whatnot in November is going to gain more engagement than 3 sporadic videos on general car care during the winter. So that's why I say we're going to focus on quality over quantity, because then there is other instances where it is the opposite, I think. And when we first spoke about content calendars, I reiterated the importance of setting aside time on a routine basis for brainstorming, generating, etc. But when there's timely or breaking news regarding your industry that comes up, it's important to post content on it the sooner than the later. Maybe this is an instance that there's something getting buzzed about in your industry, again, using the height of the pandemic in spring of 2020 as an example. There was a lot of new things getting thrown around, a lot of question. So there was a lot of buzzed about topics that everybody was looking up. So covering a buzzed on topic in your industry faster is more important than spending maybe too much time on the graphic that's being paired with it, because then from there, you're missing more of your window of engagement with those posts, and your organic engagement is just going to go down the longer you wait. And like I said, I think a good example is maybe working in HR during May of 2020 in the pandemic, covering paid sick leave, covering office protocol, new mandates, you know, everything along those lines. We had so many questions with small businesses and owners being confused about what they could do and what they couldn't do. So that was a great example of them looking to industry leaders to answer their question and get that reassurance. So ensuring that you just don't miss that window of engagement, you know, not more than a couple days after it's being announced, is better than spending more time on, you know, the graphic paired with it or how it looks, because each day that passes, the topic is just getting more and more exhausted because everybody's posting on it and everybody has their questions already answered. So posting sooner than later is going to get you a better chance of getting better engagement on the posts. And I wanted to include on here, just for a visual for everybody, on how simple and minimalistic content calendars can really be, especially when you're just starting. I think that starting out with maybe 3 posts a week, just to not overwhelm yourself, is a good rule of thumb for most platforms. Twitter is an exception, of course. You need to post several times a day on Twitter. But, you know, to start out, 3 is a great number, and it's a good way to just get started. So you can see how I label this with the week dates. You know, for this example, I'm posting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It doesn't have to be that way. You can post Tuesday, Thursday, so on, or whatever days that you're noticing you are getting more traction on your page to begin with. So customize it how it works for you, but just start in a minimal way and then build out from there. And you also see that my labels are not even that, you know, they're not that complex. I'm just giving myself basically a reminder on what I'm going to post, and more in like a planner way than getting really too detail specific. And another thing too, I want to know on is the topic of repeatable content. I don't have any on here, but this is something that you can also utilize to make these content calendars more robust. And it's, when I say repeatable content, I'm talking about content that is never too time sensitive or never too specific. And it's always like a good topic of conversation maybe in your industry, or it's a topic that always has questions asked about it. And these are good things that you can actually repeat them on your timeline. with the algorithms that we have now and how much they're changing, the likelihood of somebody that is following you seeing the same post twice is really not too high. And so I think it's a good way to maybe get some new traction on it, or get somebody new from your audience, maybe looking at that article and getting that traffic to your website. And before I move on to scheduling features, which is the last thing I wanted to talk to you about today, I have a question on scheduling features. How many people that are on here today, if you just want to drop it in the chat for me with just a Y for a yes, N for a no, have you used a scheduling feature before with your company at all? This can be just Facebook scheduling feature or any of the apps that you may know about already. Okay, a couple more seconds. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna end that. Obviously, yes, I've used that before. Matt and I use these as well. There's some mixed results for the chats, but we're gonna get into this a little bit more on what apps you can use, what are free for you to use when you're gonna get to the last step of your content and maybe help yourself out by scheduling it out in advance. Because the last battle is basically remembering to, or allotting more time to schedule these out on different platforms. And there's numerous scheduling features available to people, but not every single one is free, and not every single one is as customizable as you may think it is. Facebook is the one I have pictured here. Facebook has a free, easy to use scheduling feature for business pages, and it allows you to schedule up to 6 months ahead on your content. It's pictured here, and it's on the left-handed side of your business page on the scrolling tabs under publishing tools. And it's a great, easy to use space, but it's only for one platform. So people are looking more at scheduling apps and what they can do for you. And they're pretty eager to jump on them to make their lives easier, but some have some cons to them. They're not all the best thing for your business. Most of these apps are not free, so there is a price attached to them, being, price per month subscription or price per user subscription. So if you have multiple people on your team, it can get a little expensive for your budget pretty quickly. And some of the apps also, they will allow for customized posts per platform, but many don't. Many of these apps, you actually have to use the same caption for every single platform you want to post to simultaneously. And this hinders you because we talked about, posting content that is specific to platforms and why it will reach your audience better. An example would be hyperlinking a link on your blog to Facebook and LinkedIn, but then posting that same link into an Instagram caption. We've all seen somebody do it on Instagram. There's a hyperlink in the caption, and you just think to yourself, I can't click that. Why did they put that in there? And, a lot of instances, it can come from these types of apps. So it kind of hinders you in that way, where we think that scheduling apps are like the end all be all, and it's like one and done, and it's perfect. It's not always the case. Sometimes it really builds up in price, and then sometimes it's just not doing the platform you're posting on any justice, really. So looking at those types of things and maybe doing a little bit more research before you hop on the train for scheduling apps is important, from, kind of refraining from spending a little too much money, or finding out in the long run that maybe that caption for Instagram wasn't really working. Maybe me using Hootsuite wasn't the best idea 6 months from now. And so just to kind of wrap up today and everything that we talked about, I know I had a lot of information to you, and I hope I didn't overload anybody. But if you don't remember, anything about which scheduling apps are customizable, or why maybe you shouldn't use Hootsuite, I want you to remember just 3 things for social media and for reevaluating your social media, whether you're just starting out or you are going to do a tune-up. One is establishing your measurable goals, putting a goal in place, and kind of setting the layout on who can take on the goals and how much time and money you have for them. 2 is defining your audience again. And like I said, audiences can change year to year. Your typical clientele can change year to year. So pulling some research on that and looking at it from a bird's eye view and figuring out where your audience is residing is the best way to put yourself in the right position moving forward. And 3rd is going to be just creating a content calendar. It really is so simple to start, and it gives you such an overview of what you were doing, what you're posting, and maybe what things you're lacking in posting. So it's very minimalistic to start and simpler than you would think, but it can really just put your social media light years ahead of what it was.